What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. And break down what's going on with the market thus far and what you should be watching for as time progresses, and some very important developments on the charts. But before I break down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, deposit $100 into the account. You are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and this offer ends in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, now let's break down what's going on with SPY and the market. I first want to mention that when it comes to economic data, guys, as a reminder, for Thursday, January 11th, we have CPI coming out. That's going to be very important. It's going to be coming out before the market opens on Thursday. Now, tomorrow is Wednesday, which means that it's going to be the last full trading day before CPI comes out. And generally, on days like this, we tend to see the market being very choppy, very slow. That's typically what happens, low volume. There's a very good chance that might end up playing out again. So be prepared for some choppy price action and not the best of trading days, if anything. So when it comes to data, there's not really anything significant coming out. At 10:30 a.m., we have the New York Fed Treasury purchases from the 0 to 2.25 years. Very minor data. At 11:30 a.m., we have the 17-week bill auction, and then at 1 p.m., we have the 10-year note auction. So watch and see what this causes. Everything is very, very minor. Nothing's too crazy. And I think the market's going to see a lot of sideways boring price action in anticipation of CPI. On top of this, I just want to mention that the fear and greed index is currently at greed. It's not at extreme greed right now, and it's just kind of like at the edge. So we'll be watching to see how this develops. Right now, market momentum's at extreme greed. Other things are still at extreme greed as well. So we'll be watching to see how this develops as well. But right now, we're just waiting to see any shifts in the market that could really move this. The market is likely going to be very patient for now. Now, CPI is very important because, as a reminder, the market is expecting 3 rate cuts by the Fed, or 75 basis points worth of cuts. That's what the market is suspecting. This view could change depending on CPI. So we'll be watching that very carefully. And finally, I just want to mention that, with the SEC, they did mention that they have not yet approved a Bitcoin ETF. If people are excited about that, they said that the X account has been compromised. So we'll be waiting to see if anything else comes out. But for now, I'll be very patient with this. This is not the best of news for like crypto and also for Coinbase. But we always want to be patient. We'll see if any other new pieces of news come out. I'll be watching for this tomorrow morning as well. But for now let's just break down some charts. How are things looking for SPY? We have a new range that developed. We have this resistance in the 474s, and it kind of like tops at 475. And we have support that's holding us up between 471 and 472. We've been going back and forth for quite some time. And I think that if we're bullish, you want to see this thing close above 475 or break above that. If we're bearish, you want to see this thing basically lose 471. As of right now, I think that because of this imbalance down here, we're going to see some downside, but it's not going to be that bad. I think when the market opens, this is going to gap down. I think we're going to gap down just like how we did today. Then we're going to see the market kind of pop upon open, trade sideways, and range trade. Then we're going to see a sell-off coming. I think it's going to fill this imbalance in the 472s. Then we're just going to trade sideways throughout the day and close a little bit red, but we're just going to be sideways for the most part. That is my prediction. I think that it's not going to be that fun of a day. Lots of choppy price action should be expected because, once again, it's the last trading day before CPI comes out. So that's why I think it's going to be very sideways. As far as Tesla goes, I think the same thing about Tesla. I want to just mention that on Tesla, it's barely holding onto the daily 200 EMA. So the 200 EMA is at 234. We've been holding that. So I think Tesla's just going to trade around there. So I think what's going to happen is Tesla's forming a wedge. It's going to get very tight. And a big move is basically pending looking at this. We could be forming a flag here. So just be a little bit careful. If this pans out, this could turn into a big piece of volatility that's coming. And I think that this is going to happen tomorrow. Now I'm just going to change the color of this so that's easier to kind of like color code this. But for Tesla, I just want to mention that we're looking kind of flat right now. It's been getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So there's going to be a big move tomorrow. Will we push up first and then drop or just drop from here? I would anticipate that it would kind of like chop around a bit with the market, but we might see Tesla actually make an attempt to hold support. If we get the big move to the downside, we want to see this thing lose 234 and then 232. If we lose those supports, a bigger move to the downside is coming. If it wants to be bullish, you want to see this thing try to break above 238. If we break that, 240 plus is coming. As of right now, we're kind of stuck. We're getting very tight, so watch for a big move tomorrow. And then I think that there's going to be a risk of lots of choppy price action too. So maybe Tesla kind of like pushes in one direction, chops around a bit, and just continues. My guts is telling me it might actually break down because of how weak it was looking today. But just to be safe, we have to watch this. So if this flag does pan out, could see Tesla retest 232, chop around quite a bit, come back down and bounce, and just continue to move in these directions. So unfortunately, it is looking a little bearish, but we might see some choppy price action as well. We're forming a flag here, so we'll see where this ends up breaking. As far as Nvda goes, this is looking decent, but now it's finally starting to show some signs of like topping. We basically reached resistance around 542, and we kind of failed close to that. Now we're just chopping around between 530 and 533. Might just go back and forth for some time. And I think we have an imbalance to fill down here on the hourly. I think it's eventually going to come back down to 523, then bounce off that and trade sideways. I think that Nvidia is going to pop, come back down to 523, bounce, just trade sideways, close a little bit red, and I think that it's going to be a very sideways, boring day for Nvidia as well. I think the QQQ is going to follow the trend. I think we're going to see a nice push up when we open. First, we gap down first. Of course, we gap down to this wick area, 404. We bounce, retest 406, and come back down to 404, just trade sideways throughout the day. And it's going to be another sideways day. I'm not expecting too much because of CPI. I think that Aapl is going to follow the same trend as well. Looking at Aapl, I think that we have this resistance around 185.58 to 186. We have support around 185, 184.25, and then 183.5. I think, excuse me, sorry guys. I think that what's going to happen to Aapl is, although this is forming this very, very nice accumulation structure, Aapl might end up forming kind of like another bottom here. So we might see a little gap down tomorrow. I think that with the gap down, we're going to be looking at our support right here where these wicks are, and a bounce is likely going to come. We're going to likely make an attempt to bounce back to 186, and then we're going to come back down as time goes on. I think it's going to be a sideways day. I think Apple's going to close a little red around the 184s. So that's what I'm predicting for tomorrow. Very sideways price action, not seeing a whole lot going on. I just want to double check this Fibonacci retracement just to look at this real quick. Assuming the top is in like from right here, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see Aapl retrace to the 0.618 retracement, which happens to align around the 183.75 area. So a gap down, a pop, a drop, and then sideways price action is likely what I am anticipating. That's it for the main five. Now let's break down some others out there. So NEO is looking very weak. We had some bad news that came out. They got a big downgrade from Bank of America. Bank of America gave them a neutral rating. They went from saying you should buy NEO to now they're just neutral on it, which led to a big sell-off. 7.43 like maybe tested for it, so it's looking a little bit weaker. This is looking a bit more bearish to me, at least in my honest opinion. Now, to add on to this, I just want to mention that we're also going to be looking at some other tickers such as Rivian. Rivian's looking a little weak. It failed to break the 50 EMA. Going to be looking for a move back to 18.8. Could be coming back down. For SoFi, I would say that SoFi might be coming back down to test $8, then 7.85. So we could be looking for the 200 EMA to be tested. I think $8 could be retested on this. Might come down just a little bit. It's looking a little bit weak on the daily. Then I think we're going to trade sideways tomorrow. So a little drop to about 8 and a bounce and just sideways price action. That's what I'm anticipating for it. For the Russell 2000 or the IWM, I'm seeing something very similar developing. It looks very sideways as well. I think that we might touch 196.5 and come back down. I think it's going to come back down to this imbalance at 193 and trade sideways and close very flat, a little bit in the red again. It's also hovering below the 50 EMA, which is going to be acting as resistance. So look for a little pop in the morning, then a drop, sideways price action, a close that's somewhere a little bit in the red, not that far red, just a little bit red. That's what I'm predicting. For Microsoft, got a nice push up again, up 0.29%. But I do want to mention that we're getting very close to this resistance at 377. I think Microsoft is going to push a little higher for 377 with the market as the market tries to push up in the morning. Then it's going to reject again and then trade sideways. Very, very sideways price action. That's where it was chopping all this time. I think it's going to basically do that again. So what do I mean by that? Look at the chart, guys. You could see once it got close to this 377 area, it was just chop for like 4 straight days. So we might see something similar around 377. I think that's where Microsoft is essentially heading towards. I think that's what's going to likely end up panning out. On top of that, not just for Microsoft, let's look at a couple of others. AMD, for instance, is actually a little bit bullish looking. could push up a little bit more for 151 and then reject. I think 150 to 151 is where it's going to top. I think that's a level we're going to be watching for very carefully. I think it's forming a nice cup, so we might see a little retracement soon. Could push a little bit more before we get that rejection, so watch that very carefully. On the VIX is coming down to this support right here. The VIX may drop a little bit more. It actually came close to filling this gap. But I think it's going to balance very soon around 12.36 or 12.4. And this could be because of the market potentially dropping. The market may chop around a bit, drop a little bit more as the VIX is suggesting, and then close somewhere in the red. For the dollar index, this is starting to show some life. Going to be looking for a test of 102.78. If this breaks, like I said, this thing could turn a little bullish. That's going to be something that's worth noting. Now, you'll also notice that we technically have kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like structure developing on the dollar index. If this bounces and breaks out, this could lead to a sell-off in the markets. Be very careful with the dollar. If the inverse head and shoulders gets a break above the 200 EMA, this will lead to some selling pressure, so be very careful. On Coinbase, this is looking a little bearish now. We're going to be looking for some new news about the SEC, so that's going to be very contentious. But if I'm going to be frank with you, I think this is going to retest 144 and eventually 140.6. So I anticipate some downside into the 140s, 144 to 140.6 from a technical standpoint, but we'll see what happens with the SEC tomorrow if anything else affects this. But honestly, guys, I do anticipate some downside for it, so just be very careful. For Google, this is looking kind of flat. It is attempting to push higher. Watch this resistance in the 143 range. Might push a little bit higher towards 143, then reject and come back down to 141.7. I could see this push a little bit more thanks to bullish news and come back down. So watch that very carefully. For Amazon, we actually got a push up. I was talking about some more upside yesterday. I think we still have more potential. Going to be looking for a push towards 152.8, almost 153. I think it's going to push a little higher than chop around a bit. And then we're going to see a lot of sideways price action up there. Finally, for Meta, I just want to mention that Meta, in my opinion, not looking the strongest. It is starting to chop around, and I called out 360 yesterday. That's where we reached. I think that it's going to look at some tight resistance in this 360 area and chop around a little bit longer, then eventually retrace to 354 over the next week. I think there's some downside coming from Meta. I think it's going to chop around at 360, and we're going to be watching to see how it reacts to the 20 EMA on the 4-hour time from answer support at 354. So what do I see for tomorrow? I'm anticipating a little gap down for most stocks, a pop upon open, followed by choppy price action, then a drop. And I think there's going to be a slight sell-off tomorrow, but then the market's just going to chop afterwards. Close a little bit in the red. There's going to be some selling, but mainly just choppy price action, not the best kind of trading day. I think the market's just going to be getting ready for CPI. That's typically what happens. So I'm anticipating some selling to be coming soon, guys. So just be very, very careful. And then we'll just have to wait and see what happens with CPI after that. But that's it for this video. I want to make this one very, very simple, very, very short video. Thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Thank you and peace out.